What's going on, Badger fans? Welcome to a live call-in edition of Locked On Badgers. We're talking Georgia Southern. Preview the game. Is it a trap game? Is there such a thing as a trap game after a loss? Or is every game a trap game with this Badgers team? We're going to talk about all of that, plus your thoughts on today's Locked On Badgers. Let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Locked On Badgers. I'm your host, Ryan Herrings. We're going to already bring Rajiv and Justin in on this. See if I can line you guys up to the right. There's the right framing. We got a bunch of guests that are going to join as well. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions do apply. A bunch of people calling in. Again, we're trying to make this kind of a weekly thing every Friday. Have a live call-in show. Also have the comments as always. And we can always chop it up as well. Georgia Southern on deck. Gentlemen, I want to start here. Trap game, yes or no? How worried are you with Georgia Southern?
Yeah, no, it's not a trap game. And I'll say exactly why. Because if they play poorly in this game, the team is just not a good team right now. And that might not be the case at the end of the season. But I think we've witnessed that there's growing pains going on here. I don't think that it has anything to do with them being caught mentally not ready to play. I think it has to do with them just not executing if they end up losing this game. So we'll say more about just where they are as a team at this point, more so than, mentally were they unprepared.
Yeah, for me, trap game is like in between, kind of like after a big win. It's something that you can let your guard down. We can't have our guard down. Mm-hmm. We just lost on the road to Washington State. So we've got to believe, look, we need to act like this team is a Big Ten opponent. We need to play very hard. We got to bring our A game because, looking at something as simple as the betting line is very I feel a little concerned about it. I feel like Vegas is saying it's going to be a closer game than we want it to be. And that's because this team is not bad. This is a good team. And yeah, I'm feeling like we absolutely should beat this team. We are going to beat this team. I want to see us play well. Obviously, winning is a must in this game. Otherwise, there was a whole big problem. It's about how we play, how we execute, cutting down the turnovers, and making this a game that we can kind of set ourselves up because we're going to Purdue next week. I'm going to Purdue next week, by the way. We are, we've got our Big Ten slate coming up, and we have to be better. This is a tune-up game, but it means you have to play really well, and you got to bring your A game because if you don't, we're not going to get out with a victory.
Yeah, William Wojcicki says they look good against Nebraska last year. Just saying, obviously, let's do a little background quick on Georgia Southern, and then I want to get to the people in the queue because that's really the point of this show. We talk all the time. The point is to get other voices on here. But really quickly, Georgia Southern 2-0, just coming off a really good offensive performance against UAB. They are the number one scoring team in the Sun Belt through 2 games at 41 points per game. The number 3 scoring defense in the Sun Belt. Again, they haven't played anybody, but they do have a real quarterback. They have a fifth-year guy, spent 4 years at Tulsa. Davis Brins has thrown over 700 passes in his career. They have multiple weapons, and they have Clay Helton. They have a real coach. It's to Rajiv, your point.
Is he a real coach? Is he?
He's a real college coach.
yeah, man.
You don't get the jobs he's had without being a real coach. It's a real team, and it's a team I feel like the masses are going to expect to beat by 60. And when it's a 38-20 game, people are going to be frustrated. But it might not be a bad game. Is my point.
No,
we just got to play well. We got to play well. That's the key.
That's what I was going to say. Is this is the opportunity? Wisconsin has to start proving that they have a killer instinct this season, and this is a game you do it. You go out there and you prove that if you're a team that is less talented than you need to just put them down and put them down early.
Justin mentioned in the comments, Georgia Southern's no joke. They beat Nebraska last year, sent Scott Frost packing. I don't think that should be a feather in anybody's cap that they sent Scott Frost packing.
Right. But what it does do is it means that that our entire organization is going to take them more seriously this year. We're going to be more prepared for the fact that they did get a big win last year. So it helps us not just sleepwalk into the stadium.
Yep. All right. Let's bring Robert in. I think you were first thing in the queue. Robert, see if you can get you in here. Let me see. I don't see you. Hold on one sec. This is probably me. Guys,
I can add him. Yes. You want to bring Robert in? Oh, there he is.
I think I'm having technical issues, guys. I can't bring Robert in.
He's not showing up on my screen either.
All right, Robert, give me 1 second. Let me see if I can bring someone else in to see if it's a you thing or a me thing.
Yeah, so while Ryan's working on that, Justin, like, what are your? I think the thing is, like, the big thing I'm looking for is mistakes to be minimized, right? Like that, to me, that's everything. And I want to see the offense. I want to see the playbook, but I don't necessarily want to see too much of the playbook, right? Because I want to make sure that it's that, we're keeping stuff up, keeping stuff hidden. But to me, it's about, this should be, I want to see a mistake-free game, meaning no turnovers, meaning no stupid fumbles, meaning no stupid penalties on special teams. That's my biggest focus, because if we play mistake-free football, or relatively mistake-free football, how are we not going to beat this team handily, right? I mean, we have to play like proper though, right?
Yeah, and for me, that's a big part of it. We need to see progress here. And one of the big areas is I really, really need to see the offensive line look crisp. I need them to look like they a little bit closer to week 1, but Nelson has to look improved. He has to look better than what he looked like in week 1. I think defensively, I just want to see guys in the right spots. And I think that that's something that we've struggled with a little bit so far, is guys just not being assignment sound on defense. And it's something that they need to clean up before they play somebody that can really hurt them and cost them in a conference game.
Well, and we got Robert up, so I want to kick it over to Robert, get your thoughts on the game. Everybody ignore, in my troubleshooting, the categories on the right hand. Do the Mavs trade the pick, trade back? That's what I hadn't used before, and I didn't realize I needed to create a 4-person template to make this work. So ignore the categories. We're not talking about the Mavs tanking or Luka Doncic. Robert, man, what's going on?
Luka does need some help.
Luka does need some help. We could do a whole show on that. Robert, what's up, man? Where are you calling from?
Yeah, I'm calling from Racine, Wisconsin. So.
Nice. What's your thoughts on the games here?
Man, I think the Badgers should be able to pull it off. I don't know. It seems like this team still needs some time to gel. Like, I think I mentioned in the Discord, but like Bryson Green being out, that didn't help with them gelling there. So, and then clearly the defense, they're still working through some guys there. Mac not being able to transfer, that seems to, that might have hurt him too. So Alexander Smith just not playing so well, but hopefully they can kind of lock in is what I'm hoping for. So.
What's your biggest frustration so far this year? Like, how high were you on the optimism scale coming into the year, and where are you at now?
I mean, I was optimistic. This show got me optimistic. I said 15 and 0. I said 15 and 0 at one point, and I was saying, undefeated until you're not.
I didn't think that.
I said undefeated till you're not, and they're not.
Oh, they're not.
So, but no, I mean, Muma the hype around here, that he's kind of disappointing me. I think he still did pretty good, but he's just made a couple errors there. It seems like the timing's just kind of off, and I don't know if that's scheme or if that's, I think there were some videos with Cheney kind of making some bad angles there. So really that's kind of the frustration, is sometimes the defense, because the defense has been so good, and that's what's led people to wanting Jim Leonard back and stuff like that. But I think the defense should be able to lock in, and they're going to be bringing in the playmakers in the future to help settle that down.
Oh, that's something Justin's talked about a lot.
Yeah. I look at this, and the biggest one that let down to me has honestly been Jack Nelson. There's people that were talking about him as a potential first-round pick, and I didn't see that. I think we've always thought he has that kind of potential, but I haven't seen that level of play from him, because a first-round pick to me is a dominant left tackle if you're going to be in the first round. And we've never seen him be truly dominant. And he quite frankly lost us that game. Like, the defense got it turned around last week, and he took the wind out of our sails with his play. And right now, I think, that is the area where if the offensive line can become really good this season and can get it together, the sky's the limit for the offense.
I don't think those things happen in season though, right? Like, I hear you. I have a hard time thinking the offensive line is in season going to gel and become a lot better. It shouldn't be that bad. Like, Nelson shouldn't have a game like that. And maybe that's the point you're making, but I think they are who they are to some degree at the beginning of the season.
I think they grow the more reps they get together. Guys get more comfortable playing next to each other, and the timing gets better. They just get a little more locked in. Are they going to be a truly dominant offensive line? No, I don't think so. But I think that they can be a good offensive line by the end of the season, which would be a massive step in the right direction.
And then also offensively, Phil Longo can make adjustments for that, right? Like we can, whether having guys chipping off the ends, but also developing or running more plays that get the ball out of Tanner's hands quicker, right? Like we can make those adjustments throughout the season if we're not going to have an exceptional line like we may have hoped for, but I think they will get slightly better. I mean, look, we have to believe that game was a massive anomaly for Jack Nelson, because if it's not, we've been totally hoodwinked. Like this is like, I feel like this is Jack Nelson was going into the season our top offensive lineman, right? I mean, you guys probably would have agreed. Yeah. And I feel like that's, like to me that it has to have been an anomaly. I'm hoping.
Yeah. And credit, Hicks from Washington State. I mean, that guy was blowing up any of those short passes to Allen. I mean, that was just ridiculous. But, a lot of people want to blame Mordecai for his pocket presence. And, that really wasn't on him, because I thought that he had enough time. Like, he should have had enough time to throw it, and he was getting hit on the blind side there. So,
yeah, those Nelson plays aren't on Mordecai, in my opinion. Like, Robert, I want to cycle through a couple more people in the queue. And clearly, seeing as I'm almost not able to bring in 4, there's no way I'm going to try to get 5 in. So get a quick score pick, and give us a score here.
All right, I got Georgia Southern at 20, and then I'm going in between 42 and 45 for the Badgers.
Okay, so you get Badgers covering. Robert from Racine, thank you so much, my friend. Jump in the post-game show too if you're able to, for sure. And I know you're in the Discord, so that's awesome.
Yep. All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you. Let's get, I think Curtis was next in the queue. I have a hard time figuring it out. What's up, Curtis, man?
Hey, man, how's it going?
You were calling from a great spot, right?
Are you still spying
I
for
am. So, yeah, fun story. So we booked this hotel a couple weeks ago because prices are usually cheapest closer to the game. And it just so happened I booked the hotel that the entire Georgia Southern fan base and team is staying in tonight. So very interesting being basically behind enemy lines in my own town. Interesting scenario. But I actually had a good one for the Locked On crew. You ready for this? The Badgers have played Clay Helton once before, and we had a defensive player set a record. Do you know what that was?
Was that
3-sack Jack?
Was that Chez?
3 sacks, back to back. Last time we played Clay Helton. So we're 1-0 versus him right now. So that's got to bode well.
I love it.
I've never seen a center get more abused than in that play. He just shot the gap between their 3 straight times, and it was like, that guy has no clue what's going on right now.
It was such a great moment, man. Where are you at coming to this game, Curtis? Because we're kind of leaning up with everybody dialing in is, where is your optimism meter at this point, two games into the season?
Yeah, so I think I'm different than a lot of fans. I have a very unique background with this team. My grandfather, Lou Holland, he played for the 62 Rose Bowl team, actually had a touchdown called back in that game. They lost by 5. So my father played football here. My uncle played football here. I grew up in this athletic department, essentially. And for me, when I look at this team, I'm actually very optimistic. And part of it is because I don't think the Big Ten is very good. You look across the landscape. I still feel like, sure. Well, and that's the thing. I still feel like we're going to win the West, and it's mostly because I've adjusted our expectations down, but I've also adjusted everybody else in the West expectations down. So really, nothing's changed other than I just don't think we're as good on the national landscape as we thought we were. But in terms of Big Ten play, I think we're still right up in it.
Yeah, that's right where I'm at too. I just think people we're so hyper focused on the Badgers, and for good reason. That's what we do. But like the rest of the West is a dumpster fire.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they just are. Like outside of Iowa, like I think Iowa's going to be tough. Rajiv has worries about Purdue. I think that's fair, Rajiv, and I'll kick it over to you. I don't want to speak for you, but I'm right there with you, like Curtis. Like the West is not a gauntlet.
No. After watching that week opening Minnesota-Nebraska slap fight, I'm pretty sure that we can. There's nobody that's going to run away with it in the West unless Iowa can put enough offense on the field to basically just grind people out.
Well, and even with the way our defense has been playing, still learning this new scheme, Iowa showed me nothing that really gives me fear. Yeah. I'm more worried about tomorrow than I am about playing Iowa in terms of what their offense is capable of. I mean, this is going to be definitely a challenge. But yeah, in terms of the rest of the West, I mean, who are we looking at that really scares you? That's just kind of where I'm at with that.
Look, I think the West, we absolutely should win the West, and it will be a catastrophe if we don't. But I'm not really looking at anyone in the West. I'm looking at us. I'm worried about whether we will. I mean, if you turn the ball over against any team in the West, if you have a -3 turnover margin, you're going to lose the game. Like that can't happen. So I'm just more concerned about that. If we lose the West, it's because we beat ourselves. It's not because there's going to be some star team like Iowa or even, Purdue or anyone. No one's going to come out. Iowa certainly is about the only team that could, but we're going to do it to ourselves. And to me, it's all about our mistakes, turnovers, and how well we can play. Because let's face it, you look at the talent across the West. I understand Iowa's talented, and there's no doubt about that. But we are the most talented team in the West. I don't think that's really debatable. Certainly not by us Badger fans. But
No.
I think that to me is my concern: is will we beat ourselves?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's kind of where we are right now. As we're watching this team, it's clear that it has not locked in yet on either side of the ball. And Wisconsin has a chance to really grow. And if they can get consistent with some things, there's a chance that the offense could be a force to be reckoned with. And the defense can at least be a solid defense that can make teams uncomfortable and having to move the ball against them. I think that's really all we need if the offense is good.
Hey, Chris, go ahead. No.
I had a question for you guys. What do you think, because I have my own perspective on this, but what do you think so far about I've seen a lot of conversation in Badger internet about how Mike Tressel's performing as defense coordinator. And I got my thoughts about that, but I'm curious as to where you guys are at with him so far.
Rajiv, Justin, you guys want to start with that, or?
Go ahead, Justin.
All right. So my first thought on this is that it feels like we dove in a little bit further than we should have with the change in scheme. We've gone to a lot more single safety, man coverage, and I think that we're struggling a little bit with the pieces that we have for it. We're not a great fit for this defense right now, and I think we just decided to take some growing pains there. And I think we're seeing the guys who are really uncomfortable with that. It was safety play early. They seem to be getting a little bit more on point. And Alex Smith has really struggled with it. Like he's clearly not a man island corner right now. And it's something that hopefully he develops as the season goes on. But I'm not used to seeing him get burned like this regularly. So I think what we're going to see is it's going to be kind of a thing where they're kind of figuring out what works with the personnel that they have. And it's going to grow over the course of the season. I don't think it's going to be exactly what they want, but I think it'll be closer to what they want than what it's been in the past, which will hopefully make the defense a quality defense, at least as we move through the season.
So I'm worried that Justin is right and that we don't have the talent, we don't have the right pieces to fit this defense. What I'm hoping is that it's still a new defense and these guys are facing teams other than themselves in practice. And it's just going to take time for people to understand the assignments and to make sure they're in the right place at the right time. I mean, there was a lot of miscommunication in the Washington State game, right? Like we had penalties for 12 men. We weren't even lined up. We missed wide open guys running down the sideline. Like there were issues. I expect and hope that gets rectified and that the players we have can make this defense work. So I guess for me, it's the jury's still out, I think, right now on Tressel, because if it's, it could be either of those, or it could just be that, I just believe that I'm really hoping that it's just going to take time. And by the time we get to Iowa and Ohio State, the defense is looking much better. Or maybe Justin's right and we just don't have the players for it, which would be very disappointing.
I'm not expecting a complete meltdown. Sorry, Ryan. Not
right. Right.
You're good. I was just going to say, like, here's the thing. Smart people surround themselves with smart people, right? Like accomplished people tend to surround themselves with accomplished people. I trust Fickle, and Fickle trusts Tressel. Mm-hmm. Now, maybe that's kind of a silly thing to say, but if you're going to put your trust in Fickle and he's a defensive guy, he knows Tressel can coach defense. I've continued to think the lack of this, some of the issues we've seen this year, and I've said this before, are just we lost Herbig and Benton, and we didn't replace them with a Herbig or a Benton. I think 80% of it is we just don't have enough dudes up front. And that's no disrespect. Like James Thompson looked great last game, but he's not Keanu Benton, right? And that's no disrespect to him. I think that remains the biggest issue is we just don't have a game wrecker up front that every single play offensive coordinators have to say, we either have to roll out away from him or we have to chip him or double him or he's going to head off our quarterback.
He did so much more than people think. Benton was so big for us.
There's a reason why he's looked good in the preseason for the NFL and is probably going to play a fair amount. And Benton is a legitimate NFL talent. And he's like, we're talking about a guy that could be a fringe Pro Bowl type guy in the NFL, I think.
What's your take on that, Curtis? I know you said you had a perspective on it as well.
Yeah, I mean, well, Keanu Benton, going off of that one, I think he's going to be, if it wasn't for Jalen Carter, he was going to be probably rookie of the year on the D-line, aspect of things. But in terms of what Mike Trustle's doing, if you watched the game last week, and I'm not sure if this is accurate, so you're going to have to fact check me on this, but I heard somewhere play-for-play defense was actually better than it was last year we played Washington State.
I saw that.
And
yes.
one of the things that I think people are getting kind of, upset about is problems we would have had even with Jim Leonard. If you look at what happened in the beginning of the year last year, I think I mentioned this in the Discord. We were missing almost as many, if not more, tackles last year in the beginning of the season than we are now. And I think that's, I hate to say it like this, but it's a symptom of the failures of the previous regime in terms of really getting guys ready to play at a high level and making sure we have the right people in the right places in order to be successful. But that being said, the things that I saw that made me feel good and make me feel optimistic, I think, Wes Mullenix here is talking about 1 out of 5 out of 10. I mean, that to me is, I don't know what he's on, but I think, when it comes to optimism here, I'm very optimistic that we're going to get it right. And I think, what I think you will see is what, Fickle talks about in terms of we're going to peak toward the end of the season. The way I kind of look at it is think of it, it's like a puzzle, right? And you lay out all the pieces in the right spot, but they're not angled right. So you got, maybe one piece on top of another, one piece on top of a different one. You can kind of see what the picture is, but it's not really there yet. Once we start rotating those puzzle pieces to fit properly, you're going to see the full picture. And once we see the full picture, I think you're going to see more of what happened in the third quarter last week versus Washington State, both offensively and defensively. And I think tomorrow is a good kind of gauge to see how far we are on that process.
Give me a score prediction. What do you see happening tomorrow?
So I am not very impressed with what I've seen from Georgia Southern's defense, but I do think they're going to run a really quick game where they're getting the ball out fast, getting screens. They're not going to have time to set up deep plays. So you're going to see a lot of what we saw versus Buffalo, but probably with better athletes. I mean, they all got Georgia athletes. So I'm thinking it's going to be a higher scoring affair. I think our offense is going to be better. I'm looking around 45-28. So slight Georgia Southern cover. It's going to look closer than we probably want it to. And it's going to be kind of ugly in the first half, but I think you're going to see our athletes shine through. I think you're going to see improved play through the passing game and the running game kind of coming together, and we're going to pull out.
I love it, man. Curtis, I gotta let you go. So I got Ryan and Mark in the queue as well. But dude, thank you so much. Make sure you trip that fire alarm at like 2:30. Get the Georgia.
Oh yeah, I already got it rolling.
All right, thank you, my friend. Really do appreciate you coming in.
So
yeah, thanks, guys.
Something we kind of discussed on the Discord, and that I think is that it's actually the point is really growing on me the more I think about it. Is that when was the last time we saw a Wisconsin team get punched in the mouth in a game where they were kind of on equal footing with the team? And we saw them stand back up and fight. Like we have not had a game like that where we've kind of gotten hit like early. Somebody takes a 10-point lead, and that we've been, we stood our ground, came back, and won those games. And we used to do that a lot more, and it doesn't seem to happen anymore with this team. Like I think part of the thing we're not taking into account with the coaching and regime change is this team needs to learn how to win a little bit again. Like we can beat up on the weak teams, but they need to learn that when things aren't going perfectly their way, they need to find a way to make things work and still, be positive and make positive things happen on the field.
You need to have a quarterback, though. You need to have a quarterback to do that. Like that's the thing. We haven't had the quarterback for it.
We haven't.
Now we do. Mertz wasn't the guy, but But I have to actually head out. So if I can make my score prediction before I leave. So I'm going to go 37-20. I do think Georgia Southern covers because people are probably underestimating them and they're going to score some points. But again, what I'm looking for is mistake-free or somewhat mistake-free. I don't want to see turnovers. And honestly, we need to get turnovers. We need to create our own turnovers. That has to happen tomorrow. And otherwise, we're really going to run into some problems. So 37-20, I think the Badgers win. I think we're happier with what we're seeing. But we still have some concerns here and there. But looking forward to it.
Thanks, Rajiv. Appreciate it, my friend.
See y'all.
And we got Ryan on now, too. Ryan jumped in. Mark, you're still in the queue. You come up next. And again, I apologize for all the awkwardness with the setup. But Ryan, what's going on, my friend? Welcome back to the show. How are you doing for this game?
What's up, boys? Yeah, I got a little optimism drain while I was sitting there waiting, listening. You know,
Hey, you should still be optimistic about tomorrow. I think that's going to be a good game for us.
yeah, I got a little bit nervous though because obviously I do a little work over there with the boys at Badger Notes, and we put together a little staff predictions, and it seemed like a lot of everyone's prediction over there. Go check it out if you haven't at badgernotes.com. But everyone is kind of where Rajiv was, kind of where it's like 37-20, 30, 35-28. I'm going for an absolute destruction.
Of us or that?
Come on, and that's why I'm losing optimism, because I trust
I'm
your
just
football
teasing,
mind,
man.
and you're saying that if they lose, it's going to be based on execution. Like, whoa, the word.
Oh, we're not losing. We're not losing. I don't think we're going to lose. I think that the game could be sloppier than what we would like to see, and that's where I want to see growth this week.
Listen, Bo Dragon says there's literally no way it is not a complete blowout tomorrow, which
Me and
feels
Bo.
like weird positive energy.
I can't tell if he's being is he like reverse jinxing us with this or
I'm not
what?
sure.
See, I'll throw my score prediction out there. My score prediction is 41-21. And I think that it will be a game where we're comfortably in control in it, but there's going to be a couple of plays that I still just don't see this team being quite perfectly locked in. And it wouldn't shock me to see a couple of plays that break and we're just kind of like, really? And hopefully it's just that stupid times where we're up 3 touchdowns. Who cares? But I think that this team is going to be better. And I do think we get our first turnover finally from the other team in this game. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's 2. Now, if we do have a blowout, it's going to be because the defense finally gets rolling and we start forcing some miscues by the other team's offense.
Well, let me jump into Davis Brins a little bit because we haven't actually talked a ton about Georgia Southern's quarterback. Again, I mentioned he's at Tulsa. He's completing 78% of his passes this year, which I know he hasn't played anybody, but it's hard to complete 78% of your passes across 2 games. I think it actually leads the nation, I believe. But if you go back and look at his numbers before he got to Georgia Southern, 41 touchdowns, 26 interceptions. He had 1 year where he had 17 picks. He's actually kind of an interception machine. He's got 4 touchdowns and 2 picks this year. Even completing 78% of his passes, he got 2 picks. So if you go and watch some of the highlights, he will put the ball in danger. So this is a game where if we come out of this and we don't get close to a pick, you got to start to scratch your head and say,
that didn't happen.
We're
going 0 for this year.
At some point, this guy's going to put the ball up. They're going to throw it 40 times. He's thrown it 80-something times across 2 games, and he has a history of throwing picks. So put the numbers together. This is a game where the Badgers, you better hope they get a pick, because if they don't, you start to wonder about the defensive backs. The other interesting note I had really quick with Georgia Southern, TJ Woods, former offensive line coach at Wisconsin, is their offensive line coach, which is kind of interesting. They are 6th nationally in third down percentage, completing 60% of their third downs, which makes sense, right? Because a quick, short, fast passing game. They're going to put pressure on Wisconsin on those 3rd and 3s where they're going to go 5 wide. You got to cover, right? And we've seen alignment issues. We've seen schematic issues. You got to cover because they're going to try to create confusion because they're not going to out-athlete Wisconsin. So those alignment issues we've seen, I think they're going to get better. I don't think they're going to be perfectly cleaned up for this game yet. That was a Georgia Southern stat dump. I just kind of rattled all that off. I apologize.
No, I think there's a lot of correlation here to the Buffalo game in some ways. In the way they're offensively, they're going to try to, what they're going to try to do is they're going to try to nickel and dime us down the field. And I just don't think that they're going to be good enough to execute at that level in order to really score the ball. With Wisconsin scoring, it's going to come down to, can we run the football? I think we're going to be more aggressive and much more likely to jump into passing in this game than we did last game. So if they're sending everybody, if they're sending the house after the first drive, it wouldn't shock me to see us adjust instantly and be like, all right, we will pummel you through the air until you prove that you're going to keep your safeties back.
Comment on it, as usual, is the smart one. Ryan, we want same thing as the other guys too. Jesus, flies attacking me. Where was your? We kind
They
of
know you're full of bleep. That's why they know you're full of bleep.
It's attracted to some of my Locked On Liars takes. Where are you at now? Because I know we talked Washington State stuff. You were super high on Wisconsin and everything. You said some of it's been sucked out. You don't think? Yeah, I think you're still one of the more optimistic Badger fans at this point that I've talked to.
Yeah, I mean, really, there's no other choice. I mean, otherwise it's going to get pretty miserable. But yeah, I think at the very beginning of the week, I was very negative just because, I had basically talked down Cam Ward for a good long while. And when I see him throwing to guys that our guy isn't even on the screen at the same time, I'm just like, all right, it's hard for me to give respect. So I think a part of that I was, upset with just kind of the overall expectation and the performance of the defense. But kind of getting back to the original score prediction, I think the reason I think we're going to just absolutely mollywop these guys is because we don't have a choice. I think I said it on the Discord a few days ago. I think Fick coming out and saying, the things he said, like, oh, we acknowledge the expectations and it's just not good enough, and just making it very public, which we weren't necessarily afforded with Paul Christ. But I think this is going to be a statement game. Like, you guys have played ball, other sports and everything. Anytime you win and your coach is trying to tell you something, it's kind of like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, we'll do that next time. No, they were getting drugged on national TV talking about we should get our coach fired. These guys are bums. Those dudes heard it. And I feel like this is one of those, oh, you got something to say? Here you go. And I feel like this is going to be, I don't know. And I could be way wrong. I was way wrong on the Washington State one. I just feel that Georgia Southern they don't know what's coming. The storm is brewing, and his name's Tressel.
I love it. And Mark, welcome to the show as well. Mark just jumped in. I'm going to get your thoughts on this game as well. I actually agree with you here on this one, though, Ryan. I feel like this is a really pivotal game in the season, right? Where Wisconsin's either going to come off a loss where they should be as focused and as pissed off as they are going to be. And if we don't see an incredibly focused, physical, dominant effort, I worry about the rest of the year. Like, my 100%. Big Ten West prediction scares me to death. I think I have the Badgers covering. Like, I've been on both the other teams against the spread this year, 2-0 on that, by the way. But I have the Badgers covering. Like, I think they're going to impose their will on this game. And because if you don't see it, like after that Washington State game, I suddenly get way less confident about Purdue, Iowa, Minnesota.
If you can't do it against Georgia State, I mean, you're at some level, if you don't do that against Georgia State, if you don't make a statement, like anybody that has, those, let me book on Priceline and not pay until I get there trips to Indy, you might want your money back. If you're planning bowl trips, you might want to find somewhere warm that's not a bowl, because if you don't absolutely throttle this team. Now, I understand someone talked earlier about Nebraska and Scott Frost and stuff, but respectfully, that dude was a bum. Like, Nebraska was a bum. That whole program's a bum. Rule's a bum. Like, thinking Jeff Sims your savior, that decision maker is a bum. Nebraska's a bum until they're not. So if we lose to Georgia Southern, or even close, I mean, to me, anything under, I know the spread, Rajiv was talking about the spread, but anything under a 20-point win and a convincing defensive showing, like if they get 28 and it's all scrub points, sure. But if the defense doesn't show up and we don't win by at least 20, this is probably a 6-6, 7-5, 8-4 at the ceiling. Because if you can't throttle these guys, I know we're not impressed by the West, but if you don't throttle these guys, it's going to be a long 3 months.
Well, let's get Mark in here. Mark, A, where are you coming from? And B, thank you for calling into the show, my friend.
Waukesha.
I love it. So where are you at confidence level coming into this game?
I want to get your thoughts on Longo. He has not impressed me. Like, it's supposed to be an air raid. I don't know if that's the receivers not getting open or if it's like the play calling. Because that hasn't impressed me so far.
Yeah, it feels like, and I definitely want to get Ryan and Justin's take on this as well. By the way, Ryan, a couple Georgia Southern fans in the chat mentioning we are not Georgia State, Ryan, but you corrected yourself.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Whatever those directional schools. I mean, at the end of the day, you got Clay Helton, and he couldn't even hold a jockstrap at USC. So good luck.
No, I assure you, Ryan is one of the more learned Badger fans, although that bar may not be that high with myself on the show and others. He knows exactly who we're playing. Yeah, Mark, it's interesting to me. To me, it feels like Longo is still trying to figure out exactly what to do with the pieces he inherited, right? Mm-hmm. Where game one, he settled more into the running game because Mordecai had a couple weird reads with the freshman tight end. Game two, that wasn't really working. It just feels like I still love Longo. Like, I think he's fine, but I get your point. It doesn't feel like we were promised. I think it's just a guy trying to figure out what he inherited. And that's kind of my take on it. I'd love to get everyone else's.
No, I would agree with that. Honestly, watching what we've seen so far from Longo, it's definitely a feeling out process. I didn't love the last game that he held onto the run game a little bit longer than I wanted him to. I thought he should have geared up the passing game a little earlier and attacked more. But I've been waiting for that since the first week. Like, I was hoping that he would kind of come out and be like, we need to attack. And I kind of thought Washington State would do what they did, which was, we're going to stop the run game and we're going to make you prove that you can beat us through the air. And we didn't. The offensive line didn't hold up well enough for us to be able to do what we needed to do in that game. Now, he's looking to find, like we talked about this offline and a little bit in some of the podcasts where I said he's trying to find out what his money plays are. Like, every team has 4 or 5 plays when they need something that they know they can consistently execute it. And Wisconsin doesn't have that quite yet. That's what they're still trying to figure out, those money plays where it's like, oh, it's 3rd and 5. I know I can run this play for 7 yards, and it's going to probably hit 75% of the time if we see the defense we want. Right now, Wisconsin doesn't have anything like that. They're trying to figure out what those plays are. They're trying to figure out what guys they can rely on the most. And we'll get there. It's going to take even if we're a middling team this year, we'll still find some plays that work for us. But it's going to take time when you have a new scheme, new players like this, and everyone's trying to figure each other out. I feel good about this game. And the result is, the big thing for me is, I think that the passing game is going to continue to look good. I think that we'll see Mordecai continue to play better. And I think that we're going to eventually start hitting on some of these big pass plays. And by that, I mean, there were plays to be had in that game against Washington State. If we hit on even a couple of those, the scoring goes through the roof, because everything opens up if you start hitting a couple deep balls.
Like, you have to do it, right?
Yeah.
Like, to your point, we haven't been able to prove we can do that consistently yet.
But they were there. Yeah,
they were there, but they're not there if you don't hit them. Yeah, it's I hear you. It's kind of like two pieces of the same conversation, looking at it different ways. I do want to throw this comment up here because this one, listen, one of my favorite things, and Mark, I want to kick it back to you after this, and Ryan, I want your take on Longo. One of my favorite things about college football is the smoke between fan bases. Like, I love it, right? Like, so we got Tin Horn Production up here, Georgia Southern fan. You guys have no idea what's coming. I'm waiting for the disappointed podcast after we whoop y'all's behind respectfully. I love the respectfully.
We're not Nebraska, Tin Horn, just saying.
I will say this. If we'll be here, win or lose, and there will be a disappointing therapy session podcast if it happens. So I invite you to join in if it's there, but I don't think it's happening.
Yeah, I had to apologize already about my Cam Ward take. So if you want one too, get in line. Yeah, I was over on that one. But, sometimes a broke clock is right twice a day. And I think the boys are going to be right this time. To kind of back to that original point on Longo, I think it, like, kind of to weave it back to the beginning of the show with a point that Curtis made, that it was gave great imagery, and I didn't think of it, is when his puzzle analogy. I think, and I've talked about this on the Discord so much, as we move to kind of this NFL light product, we haven't had to deal with this for, I don't know, when was Barry here? Early 90s, late 80s. We've been kind of
we hit puberty.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying, like, we've been in the same kind of pro style run dominant system, attacking defense. Yes, it's gone from 4-3 to 3-4, but for the most part, it's been kind of the same thing. We see this all the time with some of these bigger programs when they switch over to new staff, that they have one of those like upset losses, or that it just doesn't, it looks kind of clunky at the beginning. And the one thing that I've been, clamoring for, and obviously no one cares what I have to say about it, especially at the college football playoff level, is the more you have transient players and coaches and all this stuff, having a fall game instead of a spring game, or some kind of preseason practice would have, like, against another team, like a scrimmage, would do wonders in the development of all of these programs. Now, obviously you're not going to have those upsets, and that kind of takes away from like the nostalgia and the box office that they have. But I think, to the point of like when Mark was saying with Longo that he hasn't been that impressed, it's like, I almost feel like if he's out there and he's still like, because you can only run so much in fall camp because the defense knows what you're doing. So you're not getting good reads on how real life defenders will react on it. I feel like he's just calling stuff just to see what works, because he knows when he gets to Big Ten play, like back to your point on the bread and butter, what works on 3rd and 5. When we need a big run from Braelon, are we going inside zone? Are we going outside zone? Are we going RPO? Like, what do we need when we need something and the game's on the line? What do we got in our back pocket? And I feel like new players, new personnel, and it's like the majority of our starters on both sides of the ball are upperclassmen. It's like, players pick up schemes very quickly, but there is kind of that old dog, new tricks mentality where it takes a little bit longer for those older guys. If we had a whole team like no shade to disrespect to Dion, but if we had a whole team full of freshmen and sophomores that are like just learning playbooks, we could probably pick it up a lot faster. But there's a lot of unlearning Jim's defense and offensive schemes that Paul Christ and company ran to really kind of get this thing going. It's just we're kind of hitting like we'll be going and then we'll stall. We'll be going, we're stalling. There's just no consistently. We're just basically consistently inconsistent. And I feel like Longo's just trying to figure it out.
Well, and Mark, let me go back to you quick too on this. What would get you, happy is the wrong word, but what would get you feeling good after this game? Like what happens in this game where you come out of it saying, all right, I feel pretty good about Longo and this team now?
I really like CJ Williams. So I think either he needs to get like separated or they need to do something with him, because I know once he goes, the rest of everyone else will.
Yeah, he's a difference maker type of player, and we haven't seen really him or Green make those difference making type of plays yet. Mark, I want to get Curtis back on as well because he had a point you want to bring up, but I definitely want to say thank you for dialing in, my friend. And what's your score prediction? What do you got going on for tomorrow?
I'm guessing 21-7, low scoring.
Ooh,
Mark, the spice.
I like it, man. That's a defensive battle. I love it. Mark, thank you so much, my friend.
Yep.
And I hope to see you after the game as well. All right, let's get Curtis back in as well because he had a point he said he wanted to bring back up. Curtis, you said there was something you wanted to speak to on the private side, on the chat that we were talking about.
Yeah. Well, a couple things based on the conversations we just had. One was, when we talk about what would make us feel good about a win tomorrow, and I made my score predictions 45-28. One, I think one of those touchdowns probably be in garbage time. But I think what would make me feel the most confident is seeing our offense click. I think one thing people are probably – the Wisconsin fan base is so traditional, and they're used to what we used to do, slow the game down, win a grind-out fest, run the ball, all that fun stuff. This is a new era. It's a new era from Fickell. It's a new era in college football. It's NFL light. We're not doing what we used to do. And what we used to do obviously doesn't work. And, watch what happens to Iowa this season if you want more proof of that. I think what would make me feel the best is if we have a standout offensive performance, because if we can score and we can score effectively and reliably, we don't have to hold teams to their lowest point total all season. We don't have to have the number 1 rushing defense, the number 10 passing defense on every defense in order to just make it to a bowl, right? We can all of a sudden say, okay, this is going to be a shootout. Cool. We're going to score 50. Have fun. Let's see what happens. Because we'll be able to get enough stops in order to get the ball back. We have a strong enough run game. We get big enough linemen that will allow us to at least control the game in that aspect if we're able to pass the ball reliably, move the ball effectively, and score when we need to. Even against an Ohio State. I mean, if you watch the Georgia-Ohio State game last year, granted, Georgia-Ohio State. We're not there yet. Not saying that. But they got shredded on the – yeah. They got shredded on the back end. That's why Ohio State lost. They couldn't stop Stetson Bennett. We can get a quarterback as good as Stetson Bennett, right? That's not out of the realm of possibility. So, I think for me, 45-28 could be amazing if we're, all of a sudden it's 35, to 7 in the first half, and we're just doing what we want to do on offense in the game's in control. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of how I look at it in terms of what would make me feel good. More so than the defense stepping up would be the offense stepping up, because that shows that we now have a puncher's chance against good teams. And the other thing I wanted to say, just kind of unrelated to that comment, was, if you look at the number 2, 3, and number 4 teams in the country right now, Florida State and Texas, we were making all kind of jokes about them 2 years ago. Florida State had just lost to Jacksonville State. Texas was, doing Texas things, losing to Kansas and Maryland or whoever they lose to. And, they stayed the course. And now they just beat LSU and Alabama, and they're 4-3 respectively. They're looking like they're going to go to the playoff. Those are solid teams that they decided, hey, we got to make a change. We got to do some institutional stuff here. It's going to take a little bit of time. But I trust those teams more than I trust the Colorado and the Deion Sanders this year. Not to say and take anything away from what they're doing, but that's more the path we're on than a Colorado path. That's how I see it.
Well, and that's one of the things I was going to say actually was people look at a team like TCU last year and they don't realize how uncommon that is. Like when you have a coaching turnover, teams don't do that. Like there's a reason why everyone talked about how crazy it was what they were doing. And that's because when you have turnover, there are growing pains normally, regardless of how good your program was prior to them taking place. So for fan base, and I'm as, a big of a factor in this as everyone else. Coming to this season, expectations were unreasonable. Now, we still can have a really good season. Like a 9-3 season would be a good season if we grow and by the end of the season that things are clicking. And I think that that's something people need to realize. But to expect us to come in and be like hitting the ground running is completely unreasonable with the amount of change that was taking place with this. It would have been a perfect case scenario. Like if it would have happened, we would have loved to see it. But to expect that and to have that expectation is completely unreasonable with a new coaching staff. And I think it's ridiculous that people are getting upset and thinking that, that we're not as good or what, the expectations are not being met is ridiculous. Like if they end up going 8-4 and are really good at the end of the season, take it and run with it and go into next year thinking, hey, we can take a step. Because everyone's going to have both systems under their belt. All the underclassmen will be coming up. We have a really good recruiting class coming in. The guys that are going to be able to learn right off the fly, and most of them are coming in for the spring. So you get an opportunity to really develop this system and you kind of rebuild the culture. And I think that that's a big part about what's going on here. And I do actually feel pretty good about the rest of the season, despite the loss to Washington State. And as much as flack as I gave Ryan for that game, he knew that I still believe that Washington State could do it. It's more of a factor of, I think if we both play if we play close to our ceilings, Wisconsin should win that game. It's just if we don't, and that's exactly what happened, and Washington State play closer to theirs, then we lose the game.
I think so. With that's an encouraging sign because we haven't played our peak yet.
No, not even close.
Yeah,
neither side of the ball looks good yet.
I was going to say that goes back to that inconsistencies we've talked about on both sides, and we should listen. I think one of the things we do, and Ryan Obeyer, you said you had a disagreement with Ryan on his take. Throw it up there. What the disagreement is. Like one of the things we like to do on this show, as long as things are respectful, like which you didn't call anybody names or anything, throw your disagreement up there. Let's chop it up. Like I think that's what we tried to do on this show. And we try to own our bad takes. Like we were too high in Wisconsin coming into this year. I don't think we talked enough about the potential inconsistency. So comment on Klink says, after tomorrow, I don't want to hear about growing pains for the rest of the season. If we don't succeed, it just tells me we don't have the players we need. There was another comment in here about 3-star recruits, 3-star results, right? So it's talent, it's recruiting. And that was from Stephen Keel, 3-star talent, 3-star results. Listen, again, you have to look, though, like, the teams we play this year, it's not just we're not competing against teams with 4- and 5-star talent. So, that's why I still think it's a 9 or 10 win team because we're just gonna have to trip over ourselves to lose to some of the teams on the roster. Which, by the way, if you have 5 turnovers and don't force any, that's how you trip over yourself. But I don't think that's going to continue to happen. I think there's an element of luck in that.
Yeah,
they will get better. We've seen way too many mental errors.
Sorry, Justin.
Oh, it's okay. No, go ahead.
I was just going to go back to Ryan's disagreement with me when he was talking about how he didn't agree with my Longo assessment. Half the time, Bub, I don't agree with myself either. But I look back at what the national media says because I'm just a big dumb stooge. I don't know much. Phil Longo's lost. Phil Longo has forgotten more football than I'll ever know. But when I look at the people respected across college football landscape and they anoint him like a top 4, not 4 offensive coordinator in the game, just behind like Lincoln Riley and Ryan Day. I mean, we could say what we want about Ryan Day. Like they're not going to hype that guy up if there's no substance, right? So I think what else could explain Braelon Allen leading the team in receptions? What else can explain running like 4 patterns down the field, 20 yards or more against Buffalo? I feel like he's just now. Is he doing it to cost them games? No, of course not. But I think in the Buffalo, instead of running those deep plays, like let's see what our wide receivers do on these sets. I think he's using it more of an evaluation. Yes, in Washington State, when they got down in third quarter and it turned on, we saw a lot of plays we haven't seen yet. Some of them, missed time jumps or bad ball placement. he took the cover off and said, all right, let's go. We got to go get it now. I just feel like at the end of the day, these guys are only 8 quarters in to this new system. Sure, they had it in spring camp. Sure, they had it in fall camp. But until you get that live gas going, like it's hard to tell what your guys are made of. And kind of to Justin's point earlier is like, these guys don't know how to win yet. Like outside of the transfer guys, I mean, we did bring in quite a few transfers, but outside of like the core, like you look at the defense, you look at the offensive line, those are all the same guys that lost to Minnesota at home and had 4 penalties on the goal line to lose the game. Those are the same guys that couldn't block Iowa's edge rushers and got embarrassed in Iowa City. These are the same guys that had to get a Graham Mertz sneak to beat Nebraska last year. Like, they got to get some juice back, and it's like they either have it or they don't. Only time will tell. But at the end of the day, these are all the same guys that have to get over that mental hurdle that Justin was talking about earlier. And last point to what Ryan said earlier about the disagreement. We love disagreements in Discords. If you want to come join us, we got we've got a gamut of personalities in there. We got not obviously not. I'm not saying this from a political standpoint, but if you just look on a spectrum, we got like far left, outlandish. We need Jim takes, and then all the way back to like Fickle can do no wrong. So we got a whole gamut in there, plenty of disagreement. So I don't know if I've seen your name in there before, Ryan, unless you have a different screen name. But come mix it up in there with us. And last thing for those, Georgia Southern, I will own my horrible take if it comes out horrible, but on that live therapy show, you can address us as winner and apologize accordingly. Thanks.
And you are welcome to join for all the Georgia Southern fans. We go live after every game, win, lose, everything in between. So if you're going to talk that smoke, I expect to see you on this show after Wisconsin, like Brian said, mollywops you. Guys,
I'll see you in the hotel lobby too. So
he's gonna be like a 2 a.m. wake up call.
Yeah. Guys, we're at 51 minutes, so I didn't get to all the comments for sure. I never do because I'm the worst. I do want to kind of roundtable one more thing here, but this was the crux of it. Ryan's point was Colorado and Wisconsin scenarios are very parallel. Wisconsin is blaming a new system while Colorado just wins. He had another comment about offensive coordinators shouldn't need 4 games to adjust to players. Like, listen, I don't think that perspective is a crazy perspective, even if we've disagreed with it a little bit. So let me start by just saying I appreciate, I asked you to, hey, elaborate. Let's talk about it. So, dude, I appreciate it. And I don't think you're completely out of left field there. People did not expect a huge growing, I don't want to say growing pain, but yeah, Ryan, take it.
Yeah, just a quick thing there. I totally get what he's saying. We don't have Shedeur Sanders or Travis Hunter. So when we get those guys, I think Travis Hunter would have been the eraser for anything Washington State had to do. And Shedeur Sanders, if he threw 510 with Colorado, what we have done with our playmakers and Braelon Allen in the backfield. So I think we're leaving out possibly 2 of the top 5-10 Heisman candidates of the year on the same team. And sometimes, depending on the ball, on the same offense.
We'll find out what Colorado is next year when his kid's gone. And he's got to find another quarterback to fill that spot. Because we've seen that at plenty of schools where you have a transcendent quarterback. And the second that guy leaves, let's take a good long look at Clemson right now, who has not been able to find the magic again since they stopped having NFL quarterbacks.
Well, and let's think about this too. You got to keep it real. Colorado is not Colorado from last year. They cut everybody. They kept 9 people and added 80 people through the portal. And Deion Sanders basically built an NFL team. He said, you know what? We're going to run this offense. We're going to run this defense. Who specifically fits in every single spot I need, and I'll get 2 of them. And he's Deion Sanders, so he could pick who he wanted. And that's what the reality of Colorado is. I mean, it's not like can you imagine someone coming into Wisconsin and cutting everybody? I mean, the Discord almost blew up because we lost K-Lou today. It's still going crazy. Like, and you talk about every single player on our roster. Yeah. And you talk about every single player on our roster. Yes. See ya. We're going to build a completely different team. I mean, that's not even the same thing. It's not a close comparison.
Yeah. We lost Darius Haywood Bay, and we're throwing a tantrum.
I mean, I would entertain the TCU comparison, but even then, I just think that you look at what TCU did last year. They didn't even win the Big 12. That was down. I mean, Texas was whatever Texas was last year. Oklahoma was 6-6. Oklahoma State, we beat them in the bowl game. We saw that. Who else? Kansas. I mean, they were okay. Kansas State beat them. So it's like Baylor was down. Like that wasn't a really good conference. They got up against Michigan. But wake me up when Michigan wins a bowl game. You know, that'll be the day.
Yeah,
So.
Duggan played like a Heisman. And to be fair,
Yeah.
given what that team was, you could almost make the argument that he deserved it more. Like the gut check plays that he made during that season to keep them rolling were impressive because that defense for TCU was not good. And there were a lot of gamey offenses that they played. But, Caleb Williams is a dude, so I'm not going to argue that one.
Well, and Garrett Riley is a dude, too. I mean, he's a good OC.
Yes, very much so.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the difference. Like when you have a quarterback that starts putting up 35-plus touchdowns and running like a fullback out on the field, like you're going to get away with a lot more than what a normal team is. And I love Mordecai. He's not that. He's got some things he does really well. He could be an above-average quarterback in this league, and I think that he's played like one for the most part this season. But he's not going to be a Heisman quarterback. Like if he ends up with 25-plus touchdown passes, he could have a great season, and we'd be happy with what he did. But he's not going to put up Duggan stats.
Well, and that's what P says too in the comments. Longo will attract a stud quarterback that pans out. Speaking to the point earlier about you just
playing in Texas right now.
Or he's on the roster right now as well from Mississippi State. But either way, like whoever that is the bigger point. He's stacking talent, right? And I know we all have kind of the people that we think might be the next guy, and it could be Metoyer. I love Metoyer. Like I like Braden Locke. I like Cole Crusto. Whoever it ends up being, like Longo's going to find a dude at quarterback.
Or Landon Locke. We just would have to wait for that one a little bit.
I do want to finish off here, guys, because we're at 56 minutes. Several comments about we're going to be fine. A comment about is Khan signing or not. Nobody seems to really know.
Bo, it's too early. It's not even training camp yet.
Yeah, nobody seems to fully know. But Wisconsin, from what I've seen, is probably not in the driver's seat. So it is what it is. Guys, I did want to throw a couple of these out here because I like to do a little internet sleuthing on opposing teams' fan boards, and even Georgia Southern has one, which surprised me. I was excited about it.
There's a lot of people here. I'm just saying.
No, it's awesome, man.
They all joined the chat tonight, it seems.
Yeah, we got a couple in the chat, which I think is awesome.
Come down from room 610. You go buy a beer.
This is from the Georgia Southern board. They said Athlon Sports is picking Georgia Southern to win. I didn't actually verify that, but that's interesting. This one says
BGB.
Say what?
Big Game Boomer's picking them against us too.
Oh, shocking! He's got such an insightful eye for football.
I'm not. That
he had PJ Fleck in his top 10 coaches in a fight. Unless he's going to shit.
Hey, he wants to roll the boat. Okay, more power to him.
I bet you Fleck would fight dirty though.
Oh yeah, he's definitely punching you in the back of the head. Like you're walking out to go outside, and he's throwing punches before you even get out there.
This is from GSU wins. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. Eagles beat the Badgers 45-42. Large march says we can't stop UAB, but somehow we're going to manage to stop Wisconsin. This one's an interesting one from Big Bird. He says they have undersized, quick edge guys. Just flashing back to the Washington State game, he noticed that was something that caused Wisconsin issues. That's interesting. And then Billy says, as long as we don't sabotage ourselves and Bryn stays healthy, this game will be close. Wisconsin isn't that great of a team, and I think we have a better offense than Washington State. So, listen, there's a lot of optimism coming up from Georgia Southern. I'm here for it. Like I said, I'm here for the smoke. Guys, I have Wisconsin covering. Ryan, you have Wisconsin covering. Justin, you have Wisconsin covering. Curtis, you have 45-28.
I don't. I think this is going to be a close. I don't think you look at this as a game we win by like 50. I think you look at this as a game take seriously and you pull away at the end, or you start fast and they kind of make it a game at the end. But either way, I don't think this is a pushover. I mean, Georgia Southern is going to get players that transfer out of Georgia, players that transfer out of Florida, players that transfer out of LSU. They got players, so it's going to be a game.
Yep. And Mark says, enjoyed it, guys. He's a Georgia Southern fan. Mark, thank you so much for jumping in, man. At the end of the day, I always try to have this mentality. We're all college football fans. We're all united by the same passion, right? And I hope we beat the crap out of you guys, but I hope you have an incredible time in Madison if you're coming. I hope everyone stays healthy. I hope you have an incredible year in the Sun Belt. It's nothing but love. We're college football fans at the end of the day. Yes, sir. Ryan.
Yeah, so to that end, all the Georgia Southern people in the chat, if you've never been to Madison, come down to Regent Street. Me and about 70,000 of my closest friends will be down there to accompany you. We're good people. We like to party. So come on down. Don't be afraid. Win or lose, we booze.
My name is Ryan, and I like to party.
You damn right.
Lose, we booze. Ryan says, love Locked On Badgers. Listen to every show. You guys are great. Thank you, Ryan, so much. It's reflective of the community we have. It's like this show would not be nobody would be listening to this if it was just me. It's because Ryan, Justin, it's because guys like Curtis jump on. It's because Rasheev. Yeah, it's
I would
because
be listening if it was you. I'm a junkie.
Well,
Oh,
well,
hell yeah.
Fact.
I'm a junkie
Yeah,
for Badger
that is
football.
The
true.
little last thing that I was going to weigh in on real quick here with the offensive line talk with a quick outside edge rushers. If Nelson plays like that again, I think we're going to see Rucci out there or Malman get switched. But I think we will see Nelson get pulled if he is that destructive to the offense in the game.
especially against Georgia Southern, you got to go with Rucci. I don't think it'd be Malman switching because Malman I thought played pretty well on the right
Yeah.
side.
I don't think they'll want to.
He played a lot better last week than the first week.
I agree. All right, guys, on Wisconsin, we will definitely talk after the game. Tin Horn, we'll end on yours. Love the back and forth. You guys seem nice. Hail Southern. GATA, get after that. Okay, I like
That's
it.
on every T-shirt down here. Every single person's got that T-shirt. So I was wondering what that was.
Hey, there's kids around here, Tin Horn.
Yeah.
I like the mentality. Again, I hope you have a great game if you're going to North. For everyone from your university, I hope you guys have a great game. Y'all gonna lose because I'm crushing. I'm crushing the Wisconsin Picks this year. I'm 2-0 against the spread. Like it's happening. But anyway, on Wisconsin, therapy session after the game tomorrow. We'll talk later. Let's go.